and why there is need for us to actually subsidize to improve the education of the children, and also how this impacts the children's lives in accordance to education and also the new curriculum that we have in place. Now, what is a subsidy? A subsidy looks like us lowering the price of this internet data course, us taking this price to a cost that anyone can actually be able to manage, or schools can actually be able to access this data. So in simple terms, it's making this price more affordable. And why do we see that there is need for us to subsidize? Now, we see that over 20% of the population of Uganda are people who are below the poverty line. In simple terms, these are people who are earning money that is less than even 3,500. At the end of the day, these are people who actually need to attend school. These are people who actually need these education facilities. These are people who go to maybe UPE schools that do not have enough facilities, that do not have enough internet. So at the end of the day, this is a requirement that they need within even the new curriculum that has actually been introduced that requires a lot of research. At the end of the day, this subsidy is going to be of a lot of benefit to them, and also a lot of benefit to the families that we believe are struggling. And at the end of the day, we see that, come to think of it, even in Uganda itself, as even UCC itself was able to recognize that's why we have things like the Universal Service and Access Fund in place. The Universal Service and Access Plan's goals is to promote research-based learning and provide timely, diverse information and knowledge. And at the end of the day, we see that with this in place, we actually have an enhancement of equity, and we also reduce the learning gaps. Because there are certain schools that are able to afford this, but we still believe that there are students out there who do not have this kind of subsidy, who do not have this kind of access. And at the end of the day, they need these facilities. So our major points today are, one, we need affordable access. Why do we need affordable access? Because we believe that at the end of the day, we have very many people living the poverty line, very many people who are not in access, and very many people who actually need education. So you decreasing this data cost makes sure that they actually get enough research that they need, and at the end of the day, that they will also be accounted for. That at the end of the day, when results come out, they will also feel like, yes, we did our best research, and at the end of the day, they will not have any excuse for why they did not perform or actually have something. We see things like the COVID-19 saga, where we see that by many people were actually affected by not having maybe these internet course, and how the government's thing was actually destabilized. So at the end of the day, we are looking forward to creating more literacy levels and also having internet for everyone to better their education. Thank you so much.
My speech begins now. While we acknowledge the importance of digital access for education, we believe this proposal is misguided, unsustainable, and inequitable. Okay, Chair, this is not the most priority, or this is not the most pressing priority. Looking at Uganda as a nation, it is a developing country facing multiple educational crises. As they stated in their first speech, they came and told us people are there struggling, like UPE schools already have poor infrastructure. So by them coming in to tell us that them subsidizing data is going to improve these people, or is going to improve the education sector, is not true. Let them use maybe the money they believe, or let them just try to improve the education sector. Like, remember, we are already facing dilapidated school infrastructure, shortage of teachers, lack of scholastic materials, and a high dropout rate. And this is happening especially in rural areas. Instead of the government coming up with a model of just subsiding, let it come up with a model of improving those schools that are already dilapidated and are already having poor infrastructure. Because look, Chair, even if that data costs are subsided, when the infrastructure in schools is not improved, there will be no improvement in that education sector. Secondly, practically, I'm wondering who gets that data, or who is gaining in this. The motion assumes a fair and efficient system for distributing data, but when you look at most people in rural areas, not that everyone is able to access digital devices, let's say phones, let's say smartphones, let's say maybe computers, PCs, they are not able to access all that. So even if the government subsidies that data, even if it doesn't subsidize that data, still there will be no improvement in the education sector. There is another thing you need to understand. The majority of families even also lack just access, because looking at Uganda, it's just a developing nation. Most of the people are just struggling so that to earn a living. So even if you subsidize data, even if you don't, they are still not going to gain in this thing. Basically, one reason is because they don't have smartphones, they don't have any device that uses data. So there is no way you are improving. Maybe you are just favoring people. Maybe you are favoring people from towns, and that's not what we want. We are like improving the education sector for everyone. The other thing, looking at Uganda as a nation, it is already known for corruption. It is a country that is already known for inefficiency in everything. Even just being given a mere road to construct, they can't manage to construct that road. So how are they going to manage also to do this thing, or to enable the subsiding of that work in the education sector? Or we tell the government that there are also better alternatives that can help improve the education sector, which is non-subsiding data. Like, it is costly, and looking at it, it's just urban biased. We want something that has equity, or let us balance the rural and the urban areas. I beg to rest.
Okay. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. What negative tries to do is straining a suffering dog. What am I trying to say? Government in of itself, being the Ugandan government, is already strained with developmental activities. Now, in a point in time that you're basically trying to make it just basically opt for this sort of development of infrastructure of schools, like what negative basically pushes for, we find this basically very unpractical. But notice here that this sort of development of this infrastructure has already basically been in place. But what the major issue is the accessibility to sort of information by these individuals. Notice here, we still have schools in place, but notice here that the individuals are not getting the accessibility to these learning materials. This is what Team Affirmative is basically trying to push for. We're trying to push for us subsidizing this internet cost, so as to provide these individuals with ability to basically access a learning material which is basically online. Notice here, they try to basically come and tell you that one, not a lot of these individuals are going to access this sort of privileges of internet due to sort of the limitations of the telecommunication mass. But notice here, we see that the government in of itself has tried to basically develop the sort of infrastructure within the government. We see that one, the investment within the Ministry of ICT, we see that itself, the government has basically invested a lot of money towards facilitating that it extends the coverage within Uganda. That means one, we see that government in itself is basically extending, that means the coverage and the number of people the number of people who are going to basically enjoy the benefits of this internet is basically going to be increased. But notice here, what is this debate basically supposed to be talking about? We're supposed to either find the value of us subsidizing the internet for use of students for educational purpose versus what basically Team Negative comes and say that they should not subsidize it. Notice here, we try to show you the grounds of urgency. We try to show you that one, there is some sort of urgency which must be created. One, because people have to access learning materials at the end of the day. And notice here that the digital sphere provides these individuals with accessibility to individuals who are the best in that field. So that means that in a point in time the country is looking at eradicating illiteracy, we feel that one, when individuals basically gain access to this sort of digital platform, we are going to be able to eradicate that sort of illiteracy within the country at the end of the day. Notice here, Uganda has a high rate and number of individuals who are illiterate. This is not due to the lack of schools, but due to the lack of material which is basically being able to basically provide them. Secondly, what do we necessarily try to provide to you in our case? What sort of value do we basically provide to you? One, we're trying to show you that one, we have a better access to learning material. Notice here, in a point in time that the digital sphere basically provides individuals with better sort of access and wider coverage to information at a cheaper and free cost. We feel that one, it's basically more important to basically go and enjoy that benefit at the end of the day. Notice here, subsidization looks like whereby these government in of itself basically removes that cost of internet services for those kids who are basically going to education schools. That means one, when I'm a child, I can basically go on the internet and I use it myself. Notice here, that means I am getting free education. Notice here, many of the point I'm trying to bring about is on inclusion. Some individuals they did not get that sort of inclusivity. What am I trying to say? Some people are unprivileged, so that means it limits them from accessing this sort of information due to the lack that they do not have the resources to basically facilitate them. With that, I rest.
My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. Chair, what does team proposition offer for us? What does it offer to us? It argues that with the subsiding of data prices, it is going to earn things like it's going to make like access affordable to very many children. They also go on to argue that it is going to improve inclusivity. But Chair, I would love to engage you on that particular case, on their particular case. Chair, there is no inclusivity in any one way or the other. Chair, we are featuring Uganda. We are not featuring the US. Uganda, with all we know, Uganda, first of all, people are not accessing devices in Uganda. We are looking at rural areas. We are featuring areas like Karamoja. If we are to feature even how they access electricity, we know Uganda is already failing to access electricity at a level of 60%. That means regardless of the fact that these people do not have the devices, even if they have them, they even have no way they are going to like charge them to be able like to have power that will be able to fund them. That means it does not carry out inclusivity. It only favors the urban elites, leaving out the people. Yet education is supposed to be for all, not just for a few people. Sure, they come on to say that subsiding the prices is going to like make access affordable because they believe that children are going to get research. But we are featuring kids that are in those rural areas. They have no access to these devices, and even if they have, majority of them lack the tech on how to use this. That means it's still not going to work out. Chair, that is why we do believe what team proposition is trying to do is to start with a roof instead of starting to construct a house with a foundation. Why they come on to emphasize the point that they have already failed to access like physical material. If Uganda is already failing to access physical material that is just printed matter, you mean when you subside data prices, people are going to be able to use e-learning to be able to attain those particular things? That means no, it is not going to work out. What we are supposed to do is to push what we already have. Let's train teachers more. Let's push for physical material rather than trying to feature internet. That is not going to cater for all. Chair, we go on to argue that it causes inequality in access and devices to electricity. Even if data is subsided, the majority of rural areas and low-income earner children do not even own smartphones, laptops, or tablets to access like the educational content online. And even Uganda's electricity access rate is below 60%. That means majority of the places in Uganda are not already accessing electricity. Therefore, regardless of the fact that you subside these prices, you're not doing anything. You're just adding a problem to a problem. Sure. We also argue that it causes cost inefficiency and budget misallocation. Internet subsides would require massive ongoing financial resources and would priorities should be based on building classrooms in underserved areas, hiring trained teachers, or supplying physical learning materials to schools in be able to earn our major goal of providing education for all. I rest my case.
I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. The chair, for some form of clarity, I don't want us to go astray in such a debate. We are trying to understand whether it is really important for literacy to be promoted in Uganda or whether children should continue education. That's why I think that then team affirmative wins in this case. But anyway, let's just try to go into what team negative represent in today's debate. They bring two major clashes and they talk about sustainability and inequity. They come and tell us that, look, Uganda in of itself is a corrupt country, or as they claim, very corrupt country, and they think that then these facilities are not going to be received by certain schools, or maybe the matter of fact that they still have poor infrastructure, and maybe the teachers are not receiving enough salary. Chair, we come and first start with the clarity of the definition of subsidizing. We tell you it's just necessarily reducing the cost of internet. We are not investing any money anywhere else. I don't know where you're talking about the investment, because I think if you come to their world, we think they're talking about investment in infrastructure. Do you think that all the schools are going to be invested in, or do you think that money is going to be received by those schools to invest in the infrastructure you're talking about? I think that then you see that there's more corruption in the world they try to present, because we are trying to tell you that, look, we can solve that problem of infrastructure later, but let's first promote quality education, because we show you that the trends that are currently happening, we show you that kids are able to access phones. But even secondly, when you talk about inadequacy of such accessibility, we come and front you and be like, within villages, you think there are things like internet, those internet cafes that are there. So it means that a child that does have access, that it might not be that much, but access is still there. You cannot say it's not there at a certain point. But even secondly, I think parents are able to access maybe a mobile phone at a certain point. But the point is, within the day that data is very expensive for the student to access this information. If we do a comparison, how much is a textbook compared to data of 500 shillings? You're trying to tell us that we should buy printed materials, but you're realizing that the internet has quality information that comes from various sources. So it means that a child is not only focusing on one source, but a very broad source of information. So it means that then we think the levels of illiteracy are then taken out at the end of the day. What's the importance of such a rebuttal? Trying to show you that, look, we don't think investment of infrastructure is going to be a problem, because we are just necessarily reducing the price so that we can work on the infrastructure you're talking about. Let the children have this, then we work on the other. The other point comes to iniquity. They come and tell us that necessarily a counter argument of saying all Ugandans that are here are necessarily broke, and they are trying to tell us that they cannot access this. Just one simple saying I know, in Uganda they tell you you're broke alone. So what comes into place? Necessarily you cannot start blaming UPE schools having computer labs that they don't have access to this, because I'm very sure that the government has already invested this. What my first speaker showed you, UPE schools are able to access this information. They have computer labs, so you cannot tell me that they don't have access at all. But even secondly, taking out your best case, we try to show you that, look, you're saying the price of money that comes to science, money that comes to these teachers is very low, and I still question myself. Science teachers are able to receive up to 4 million Ugandan shillings. Why are you saying that the money in Uganda is very low if at all those science teachers are able to receive this money? So necessarily we think that they are looking at a very big picture rather than looking at what is the importance of this calamity to place. Necessarily in concluding, we try to show that it is important to promote literacy at the end of the day rather than pointing for such things. I beg to rest my case.
Before I start my speech, I want to thank my teammate, our HM, and our beloved patron for supporting us. So, Chair, my speech begins 3, 2, 1. Panel. Today's motion basically, as opposition, we have not been arguing that the internet is bad, or that the internet is biased, or that subsiding costs for children on internet is a bad option. Chair, what we want Team Proposition to understand in today's debate is that we argue that even though they subside the costs of the internet, there are still problems existing in status quo that their counter model, their side, their case has failed to solve in today's debate. Chair, first of all, we come in and tell them in our second speech that they are starting with the they are starting with the leaves, not the roots of the problem. The root cause of this problem, you cannot subside internet data costs for students, and yet the infrastructure is still poor, and yet teachers are lacking in institutions, and yet they actually lack learning material. That is starting with the leaves and leaving the root cause problem, which means in the long run, still the infrastructure is still going to affect the children in studies. The poor teaching services are still going to affect the education sector in this case, and even though they subside the cost share, we believe they are still going to face this problem. Second, Chair, they still come and tell us that the government is not going to waste any money because they are not investing in this. Notice, Chair, that even if they are not investing, they are spending a lot of time, and that is wasted of resources and time subsiding internet data costs. They still have to pay the telecom companies that actually have the initiative of providing data, which means in this process they are actually using funds and spending more economy. Chair, why is like they come in and tell us that in their case they are earning literacy equality for education. Chair, we question their impacts with this. Why do they want to promote quality education when they are not actually caring for education for all? With this in their case, on their side of the house, we see that there is urban bias, because they are only focusing on the people who will be able to afford to access these electronics that are going to help them like meet this data cost. They are not caring for the people in rural centers that cannot actually afford these electronics, which means even when they subsidize data costs for the people, there is going to be like the education system is going to be differentiated further, because even the people in rural areas deserve a chance to be equal. Second, Chair, in their thing of promoting literacy, they still come in and tell us that they are eradicating illiteracy because there will be free like education, youth subsiding of data costs. We believe this does not exist on our side of the house, because Uganda still has a fragile economy. It cannot support this subsiding of data costs, which means their claim does not exist on our side of the world. Chair, notice this that we start problems that are actually facing the education sector that the government should actually first solve before subsiding data costs like for students. We give them problems of poor infrastructure, lack of teachers. Not everybody is going to be able to access devices, and like the accessibility will be low, and we actually have corruption in like the government structure of Uganda. These are problems they on their side of the world do not actually solve. And with that, Chair, I believe that the house to win like the side to win this debate should be a side that has education for all, promoting literacy for all and education for all. Chair, I beg to oppose my case.